You're breathtaking.
Waiters/waitresses. What is the worst first date you've witnessed? Couple in their mid-20s comes in. It's obviously a first date, but they seem to really like each other and are getting along well. I wasn't serving them, however. I was serving the table next to them. About halfway through their meal, I noticed them holding hands over the table. Cute. Then, the guy lifts her hand to his lips and kisses the back of it. A bit of an outdated gesture, but still cute, I guess. The woman seems slightly confused but goes along with it. A little while later, I see the guy do it again. Okay, dude. Then again. Woman is confused and looks a little uncomfortable. They are no longer holding hands. I go to serve my table and see the dude full on making out with her hand, tongue and all. Woman looks extremely embarrassed and uncomfortable, looking everywhere but at her date. I go over and casually ask if they need anything, and the dude stops. Woman yanks her hand back. She left pretty soon after. I once saw a guy try and impress his date by pretending to know about wine. He then proceeded to pronounce every single wrong one. I don't even know how I would phonetically write out his butchering of Chablis and Sauvignon Blanc. Date looked at him like he'd just taken a shit on the table. There was this young guy eating dinner with his mom. I noticed they seemed weirdly uncomfortable and distant but didn't think much of it. Turns out the lady was not his mom. He had met her on a dating site and had been very clearly catfished. The lady was at least a good 20 years older than him. When she left the restaurant, he stayed behind and told me about what happened and asked me out. I politely declined but agreed with him that that was a really weird situation. Not a server but a bartender. My girlfriend was serving an obvious first date and they were ordering an alarming amount of drinks with 30 minutes of sitting down. I asked my girlfriend what was going on and she said the girl was doing all of the shots they ordered. I walked from behind the bar to the bathroom purely to check in on the situation, and good lord, this girl on the date was blasted and just saying frick every other word. Eventually the chick went outside to smoke and the dude beelined to the bar and asked if he could give me money for the waitress and sneak out. Actually gave $200 for a $70 tab, so nice. The girl came back and ate the food they ordered, then tried to order more drinks. Had to throw her out and she started calling me Edgar. I'm very much a white dude. Bizarre ass night that my girl and I still talk about years later. This probably doesn't compare to some of these freak show stories, but I'll tell it anyways. I worked for IHOP for a very long 3 months. Most of my experiences were decent. On one occasion, one of my acquaintances came in with a date. We had been friends as kids and still sometimes chatted amicably. At this time, I had a stutter that would happen if I spoke too quickly, was stressed, or just trying to speak hard words. I went up to their table, said hi to my friend and her date, and instantly flubbed the greeting with a stutter. Honestly, my stutter has never bothered me. Never felt like a bad thing until that moment. Her date looked at me, did that little condescending laugh that we've all heard before, and then repeated what I said while mocking my stutter. I could see my friend physically recoil from him, her face clearing, showing a "did you really just act that way" expression. At the time, I just brushed it off. It bothered me for about 2 seconds in the moment, but even years later I still haven't forgotten. Still, I could tell with that one little moment of ashlery, my friend was not gonna go on a second date with him. He reached for his water and punched it directly into her lap. Oh man, thanks for asking this one. I've got a great one. Happened at my former restaurant. Reservation for 6 o'clock. Young guy comes in a few minutes early, tells me he's kind of nervous because it's a first date and he hasn't had many before. Blah blah blah. Kind of sweet really. Anyways, girl arrives about half an hour late and proceeds to get very, very drunk. About midway through the meal, she answers her phone, takes the call, and starts talking about her date, in front of her date, saying stuff like, well, he's not usually my type. I don't exactly like him, but I felt like why not? Right in front of him. Young man looks so discouraged, walks up to me, pays his bill, and leaves. He's a really nice guy. He's come to the place I work at now a few times. I'm not service staff, but I often eat/drink alone and people watch, and first dates are almost always painfully obvious. Worst one I ever saw. 2 people who were probably perfect for each other. They were both completely self-absorbed. How completely? They both started stories and kept telling them at the same time. They weren't even listening, just talking at each other. I was enraptured by the sheer insanity of it. I didn't eat for like 45 minutes as they both just yapped away, barely stopping. This isn't as bad as some of the others, but the guy and girl arrived separately and it seemed like they were meeting for the first time at the restaurant. They sat down, then the girl excused herself and went to the bathroom. The guy ordered drinks for them both while she was gone then. After like 30 minutes, ordered 2 meals. It was so obvious she wasn't coming back, but he kept calling her and eventually just left all the food and drink untouched and paid the bill. Bartended for a decade. For a while I was at a medium-range Italian restaurant. More than once I saw a first date go awry because one of the two drank too much. Most memorable was a woman who started downing rum punches. They were at a table so I couldn't see them and I guess the waiter had forgotten his red light, yellow light training. I don't know if they still do that. After the sixth one I asked if these were all going to the same person and he said yes. I was like, oh shit. Sure enough, girl ended up puking all over my bathroom and locking herself in. When we got the door open she was passed out and there was puke everywhere including all over her. No cab would touch her so the guy ended up taking her home. He came in a week later and said they were going on another date. I was skeptical. They've been married for about 15 years and are absurdly happy. She avoids rum punches. Witnessed a CPL on their first date having a few drinks. Started making out by the third. Dude cried by the fourth. Started sucking on her finger. Cried again. Abruptly ran out of the bar and down the street. She paid. Came back 2 weeks later. I pretended not to recognize him to be nice. And he brought it up. I think you served me on a date 2 weeks ago. I dunno man, I serve a lot of people yet it was you. Remember? I cried and ran away. Bruh. I'm a bartender at Popular Burger and Wine Bar. I had an older gentleman, about 60 years old, come in on a Wednesday evening and order a bottle of wine and 2 glasses as he's waiting for someone to show. This other older woman shows up a short while later and both of them hit it off. They sat themselves right behind my paw so basically anytime I had to ring something and I had a front row seat to their date. Both of them crushed 3 bottles of wine and sit there for about 4 hours talking away. Around the 4th hour of them sitting they both started making out randomly and will not stop. They started sucking faces with an uncomfortable intensity, somewhat terrifying all my bar guests and myself. At one point the older fella leaves for the bathroom and his date proceeds to let me know it's their first time meeting. Not entirely the worst first date for them I suppose, but definitely was for me and the other customers. Not a waiter, but me and my girlfriend sat next to an obvious first date at a Pan-Asian fusion restaurant Zen in Durham, UK. She comments that her main course wasn't quite what she expected and thought it'd be spicier. He then snaps his fingers above his head very loudly so half the restaurant turns around to look and a waitress rolls her eyes and goes over. He demands that they cook IT again and make IT hotter. Next thing, there's half a dozen Thai waitresses around the table calling him worse than shit in Thai. My Thai girlfriend translated, causing a massive scene while her face turns red and they take her plate away. She then has to sit with no food while he continues eating. He eventually realizes he's fricked up and stops eating, but she sarcastically tells him to enjoy his food. They brought her a fresh plate and they ate in silence. First and I'm sure the last date. I was hanging out at Starbucks and witnessed a horrible date. She was Japanese and he started off by showing her his shirt with sumo wrestlers on it. Then would ask questions like, what's your favorite sushi? Do you only speak Japanese? How do you say toilet in Japanese? They have sumo in Japan, right? Did you see my shirt? It was so amazingly awkward I bought another cup of coffee to listen to the entire thing. I had a table I'm pretty sure was a married couple, in their 50s, clearly together etc. So call it a date anyways as they were out for dinner together, so it qualifies in a way. They both ordered draft beer. When I was bringing it out, I came to the table and the woman was screaming and crying uncontrollably, the man bending over her. I thought she was having a medical emergency. Turns out she got a call that a parent had died. The man turned to me and shoved a card at me, asking to pay because they have to leave ASAP. And I said it's okay. They had not had anything. I was still holding the beers. And get this, I got a write-up for doing this. As if I was going to make these people pay for 2 beers they never even sipped because a genuine emergency happened so that giant big corporation can add $12 to their $600 million. Couple years ago, I was tending bar at a high-end steak joint. A pretty brunette walked in and sat down at the bar. After fixing her a cocktail, I asked if she'd like to see a dinner menu. She explained that she was waiting for a date. A few moments later, the guy arrived carrying a large bag. It was immediately obvious this date was their first. Their conversation was lurching from forced to downright painful when he reached into the bag and pulled out an album containing his Pokemon card collection. He set the book on the bar and thumbed through each page, thoroughly and lovingly describing every card, attempting to educate his date in the ways of Japanese pocket monsters. I'll be fair to the guy, dude was passionate. She feigned an emergency and called her friend to pick her up. He stayed and ate a plain hamburger at the bar. Edit, both of these people were in their mid-30s. I have no idea if they were on a date or been married for too long, but we had our flight canceled due to a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. The only place open for dinner was an Indian restaurant. There were a few customers in there. It was an interesting looking bunch, sort of what you'd expect eating out on Christmas Eve. This one couple though looked to be in their 40s, a guy and a woman. She never said a word and looked like she was in a trance. The guy though kept talking at her in this slow monotone. And another thing I hate about you, and proceeded to critique her while she continued to stare into space. Girl and guy came into the barbecue restaurant I worked at. They met at the door exchanging the usual hi, nice to meet you, etc. The guy was a complete dick. She ordered ribs and he said, do you want to keep that hot figure of yours or look like that chick over there? Points to slightly overweight woman then. When they were waiting to pay, he starts flirting with the chick behind them. She deadass waited until he paid then left without waiting for the food. I served a table where the woman looked frightened and had a body language like she's leaning away from the guy while gathered tight. My coworkers would ask me if she's okay after they passed through my section. The guy was sitting and leaning over the table. Looked like he was invading her space. Angry looking guy. He talked to her like she was a dog that just pissed on the rug. When he went to the bathroom, I asked if she's okay and she said yes. I doubt he got a second date though. Not a waiter, but I cannot miss the opportunity to share this story. Friend and I meet up in a chain restaurant for a meal and a catch up. In the booth across from us are a guy and a girl in their 20s, very obviously on a date. Things seem to be going moderately well. Just kind of let them do their thing in the background as my friend and I chat about life and stuff. Then, guy stands up halfway through the girl's sentence, cutting her off. It's quite a violent standing, so draws the attention of most tables nearby. Guy then says this in a way that makes me think he has rehearsed. I'm sorry, Jen. I just wanted to give women one more chance, but I can't do it. You're lively, but women just aren't doing it for me. Guy throws some money on the table and walks out. Jen kinda sits there with everyone looking at her, going redder and redder. Lovely waitress swoops in and saves the day for her, but wow, never seen anything that completely insane before or since. At least just wait for the date to be over and politely decline a second. I'm a host at a restaurant, but my first week working, a gay couple got in a fight in the middle of their meal, drawing attention from everyone in the restaurant. Before my manager could step in and stop it, one stood up and shouted, "You're the reason most people are straight," and left. I've always thought about how it is both a roast or compliment depending on sexuality. Work at a bubble tea restaurant right near a college. It's a nice hangout spot with dim lighting, comfortable furniture, and board games. A lot of first dates happen here. Probably the worst I've ever seen was this guy that looked somewhere between 17 and 19 years old who met up with this girl around the same age. They got teased and took a seat at a table and played a board game and talked. His mother sat at the table next to him the entire time and just stared them down. It made me feel so bad for him, but the icing on the cake is when she goes up to them at 8:30 and tells them that it's time for the two of them, her and her son that is, to head home. The guy is visibly pissed but says goodbye to her and follows his mom out. Girl comes up to order another tea and I asked her about it. She was more than happy to fill me and the other girls in. This lady had essentially injected herself into the date, interrupting their conversation and critiquing her son's behavior. I was on a first date and we were comparing extracurricular activities. He was in a bowling league and played softball. I was on a dart league and played volleyball. We were talking about darts and whether it was/wasn't an activity that demanded some sort of skill over luck. I felt a bit insulted by his patronizing attitude. And before our food even came, we started to argue across the rather large booth where we sat. He said, "Fine, since you're so skilled at darts, see if you can get an ice cube into my mouth from there," and I said, "Fine, open up." He opened his mouth, and I launched an ice cube straight into the back of his throat. His eyes bugged. He clamped his mouth shut, grabbed his throat, and fell over in the seat. This waitress that had been standing nearby, shaking her head at her stupid argument, ran over to help when he sat up, threw the ice cube onto the table, yelled, "Frick you," and stomped out. I said that I was really sorry, that I didn't mean to get it into his throat, blah blah, but he kept on stomping and I never saw him again. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Please subscribe if you liked the video. It really helps the channel to grow. See you again.